the sort of provocative statements that sort of came after the tariffs, where the Russia-Ukraine war was called Modi's war.
That has been characteristic of Donald Trump's administrations, that policies do change quickly and are adapted quickly. And, Donald Trump's strategy is often to put out high demand and then negotiate down from that and then declare victory. And that may be what he's doing now. And so he was very quick to claim credit for negotiating a peace settlement for the conflict between India and Pakistan in May, which Prime Minister Modi vigorously denied and said that, no, we don't need to rely on the United States or anybody in our dealings with Pakistan. But Donald Trump was pushing that narrative and hoping that Prime Minister Modi would nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
And when that didn't happen, he takes it personally.
Do you feel that President Trump overpromised the Alaska summit and about his mission for peace?
He clearly expected more. He thought he could get some kind of resolution or at least commitment from Vladimir Putin just by sitting down with him, because that's how he has sort of carried out his career. I'm a businessman, I negotiate, I meet people face to face, we work it out. At the end of the meeting, we have a result. And that works more in business than it does in politics, especially when there's so much at stake, such as a war over an entire country.
7 years it took for Prime Minister Modi to go back to China.
Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi can leverage to say, hey, we've got power. We don't necessarily need you, the United States, and unless you are going to deal with us on more favorable terms, and we over here, hey, we can work some things out that will be to our benefit.
What is this infatuation that American presidents have with Pakistani dictators or army generals?
Well, Pakistan is...
Professor Jones, thank you for joining us. Before we start, could you introduce yourself and tell us what your area of specialization is?
I've been a journalist for close to 40 years. I spent 18 years overseas in Japan, China, and France. And the rest of my time was spent in the United States, including at the United Nations, but in New York, in Detroit, covering the auto industry, and in Silicon Valley, covering technology. And I teach international journalism and writing now at the Keck Center for International and Strategic Studies at Claremont McKenna College in California.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for talking to us. You know what, I want to dive right in, and I want your take on what you make of President Trump's tariffs on India, and why do you think India has been sort of singled out for the so-called secondary sanctions, as President Trump likes to put it?
Well, he's one of the burdens on him and his administration, but on him personally, is the Russia-Ukraine war, which he has pledged to end very soon, but has not been able to. He was pledging to end it quickly, but still more than 6 months into his administration has not been able to. He's frustrated by the persistence of Russia in carrying out this conflict, and he sees India's purchase of Russian oil as working against his efforts to end that war. He sees that the proceeds from India's purchase are going to help fund Russia's war with Ukraine. And that's why we had the initial 25% tariffs against India doubled to 50%, which is pushing India and Prime Minister Modi to look for other trading alternatives, rather than having to have all this taxes spent on exporting goods to the United States. So that's a rather unusual situation, because India has been a close ally of the United States economically, but especially militarily and geopolitically, as we've seen by the Quad agreement with Australia and Japan also, which ironically is meant to combat or at least stand up against China. But now you have India looking toward China more as a potential trading partner because of the policies that the United States has imposed.
I'm going to come to the China question in a bit, but I just want to delve a little bit deeper into the ironies that have come out of this. There was a report recently by a Ukrainian sort of oil firm. It's a oil security sort of assessment intelligence firm that said that India's exports to Ukraine for diesel was the largest in the month of July. Now the irony here, as you talked about Russia's war, there could be an argument made that India was also funding Ukraine's war over here, or Ukraine's defense.
That's something that the United States would support when put in that way. As a trading company, you look for trading partners, and if there are difficulties with one trading partner, then you might just shift your focus somewhere else. I think that these tariffs that the U.S. administration have imposed around the world, not just to adversary countries but to allies as well, are reshaping allegiances and reshaping trading partnerships. And so it's a basis of capitalism that you sell where your markets are. And if there's a market for buying or selling oil, then they exist, and countries will pursue it. Now there is a penalty that the U.S. has imposed on India for doing this with Russian energy. How long that will last, how serious it is, that we'll have to wait and see, because these policies change very rapidly, and it's not clear what could happen next.
Now, Professor, what would you speculate is the reason that Trump is not imposing those same penalties on China? Because China is probably imports more Russian oil than India.
China has leverage. China has great leverage. It exports more to the United States than most other countries. It's a manufacturing base for many American companies, and I think American companies they're just only now beginning to try to relocate their manufacturing out of China to places like Vietnam or India and Sri Lanka as well. Now, these policies make that more difficult, and so an American company that is thinking about trying to move some manufacturing from China to India to diversify and avoid risks that may arise to these companies are finding it enormously difficult when now India is being put in such a position of being squeezed for more tariffs. If you're Apple, you don't want to be strategically moving production to get away from high tariff China to India, only to have high tariffs imposed there. So that's why it's somewhat chaotic, and the fast-moving changes are bewildering and very difficult for American companies to deal with.
What do you make of America as a reliable partner then? I'm sure other countries are also looking at what's going on with America's policy vis-a-vis India. I mean, the Biden administration had in fact told India to purchase Russian crude so that oil prices globally would be stable. And now you have a 180 going on over here. So when it comes to reliability, what do you make of it?
Well, the United States has presidential administrations that come and go. A term is only 4 years. Joe Biden was president for only 4 years. And in 3.5 years, there may be another sea change where there is yet another 180. So that's one of the, I guess, risks or compromises you make for the way that the democracy is practiced in the United States. But many economists and foreign governments are cautioning that the United States needs to be more stable and more predictable so that these kinds of wild fluctuations and uncertainties don't happen.
Do you think the Quad is still a viable grouping now?
I think the Quad will survive. I think it's pretty. It's very valuable to not just to the United States, but to countries like Australia and India and Japan, which is the other Quad member. And so this is a dip in relations in that alignment and alliance now. but I think it is there for the long term because it does benefit the partners, all the partners, and if it may be something that Prime Minister Modi is kind of leveraging on his own to say, well, okay, is the Quad important to you? If it is, then maybe you can back off on some of these sanctions that you're imposing on India. Or look, I'm friendly with Xi Jinping now, and we can set up all kinds of trade agreements that don't involve the United States, and so that's not to your benefit.
I guess for New Delhi, it was perplexing, Professor, because there was a sort of uniformity and almost a bipartisan agreement in India-US ties, probably since the Clinton administration and onwards. There was a steady rise in it, in fact, in relationships. And then in the last few months, this sort of shock turn, and tariffing India is one thing. The sort of provocative statements that sort of came after the tariffs, where the Russia-Ukraine war was called Modi's war. I have a whole list over here. President Trump tweeting that India is a dead economy. What gives? Such a short period of time.
Well, that has been characteristic of Donald Trump's administrations, that policies do change quickly and are adapted quickly. And Donald Trump's strategy is often to put out a high demand and then negotiate down from that, and then declare victory. Yes. And that may be what he's doing now. 50% tariffs on India. Okay, now let's negotiate down from there, because anything down from there, even if it negotiates back down to 25%, that's still a heavy tariff and in favor of the United States. Donald Trump has been very he wants to be a global player, but not just economically, but politically, geopolitically also. And so he was very quick to claim credit, as people in India know, for negotiating a peace settlement for the conflict between India and Pakistan in May, which Prime Minister Modi vigorously denied and said that no, we don't need to rely on the United States or anybody in our dealings with Pakistan. But Donald Trump was pushing that narrative and hoping that Prime Minister Modi would nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah. And when that didn't happen, he takes it personally, and then tends to, when he does take something personally like that, he reacts with tools that he has at his disposal. And as he has said many times, he thinks the word tariff is the most beautiful word in the English language.
So how much of this is actually personality politics in play? Because there are reports now corroborated by multiple news organizations over here in India as well as in America now. The New York Times also had a piece that President Trump tried to get a hold of Prime Minister Modi on phone to try and get him to the White House, when the Pakistani Army Chief General Asif Munir was also over there, and Prime Minister Modi outrightly refused it, and also categorically told him that he had told President Trump, that is, that he had no role in any mediation in the India-Pakistan conflict, which has been the stated line for Indian prime ministers for decades now, of no mediation in the conflict. How much of this is actually personality politics rather than just a trade issue?
Well, I think a fair amount of it is. You don't really have world leaders trying to jostle around and maneuver other foreign leaders in order to win something like a Nobel Prize. It's there are constant warnings from economic experts, both within the United States and outside, that the tariff policy of this administration is going to ultimately be detrimental and is quite risky to the American economy and the American people. And so it's not economic logic, I think, that is driving a lot of it, but it is a sense of, well, what do we or what do I get out of it? And in that case, it is more personality driven or personal aspiration driven, which can, of course, have severe consequences.
Professor, another sort of aspect of this, sort of the rising anti-India sentiment that we've been noticing, which is being seen in the MAGA base of President Trump. I want to talk about one tweet of Charlie Kirk. I mean, he's a very influential sort of Trump supporter, part of the MAGA base. He says that America does not need more visas from people from India. Perhaps no form of legal immigration has so displaced American workers as those from India. Enough already. We're full. Let's finally put our own people first. Now, the Indian population, the Indian American population, diaspora, represents a small fraction of the American population at large. This is also an aspect of the White House's policy towards India?
Well, Indian professionals are sometimes quite high profile. When I covered Silicon Valley, there were senior officials in Hewlett Packard and in Intel, the microprocessor maker, from India. Look at the CEO of Microsoft. And so the high profile, I think, leads to sort of more broader beliefs that aren't necessarily borne out by reality. I don't, Americans in general don't have negative or hostile feelings toward Indian people. There are many Indian students at my college here, but at colleges across the United States who are extremely successful. Many return to India and are successful. So it's not as though there is a flood of people from India coming here taking jobs from Americans. But I think governments anywhere look for enemies or targets to be able to place blame, and American society has experienced that in many different ways, often unfortunately, and so it can become sort of codified in policy when you're able to do a lot of proclamations on your own without, say, going through Congress or a legislature. And I think that's some of what we're seeing.
Let me flip this a bit. How influential are these sort of MAGA voices, the Fox News anchors that usually toe this line, to President Trump's outlook?
Well, they're very important to the president's outlook because he listens to them, but they often say what he wants to hear. So it's kind of an echo chamber of points of view being recycled and escalated. So Peter Navarro also had this recent comment about wealthy Indians. He meant, I believe, just wealthy people. But the wording, implied.
It was a very vague sort of castist jibe, saying the Brahmins were the ones who had all this wealth. I don't really understand. I don't think he understood the context behind those words. But it's these provocative statements that it just seems that the off ramp is getting more and more difficult now.
Well, it is, as I say, as an echo chamber, these comments, escalate and they get repeated and then picked up not just by strong supporters or advisors to the president, but by general followers and voters, and therefore become part of not necessarily policy, but public opinion that can support or influence policy. And in the case, Donald Trump is known to be very sensitive to conservative media and what they say, and it shows when he likes it, when he likes a question, when he likes a line of inquiry, and he, it's quite clear in the White House press organizations that some organizations are very much favored over others because of their political standpoint and support of the president's policies. So, yes, in that sense, those comments and support from such media are quite influential and play a big role in his decision making.
This Alaska summit that happened, we saw those visuals of President Putin, President Trump meeting, and the pageantry involved with everything. And then we also saw fast forward a month, and we saw President Putin with Xi Jinping in Beijing at the Victory Day parade. Do you feel that President Trump overpromised the Alaska summit and about his mission for peace?
Well, he clearly expected more. He thought he could get some kind of resolution or at least commitment from Vladimir Putin just by sitting down with him, because that's what that's how he has sort of carried out his career. I'm a businessman. I negotiate. I meet people face to face. We work it out. At the end of the meeting, we have a result. And that works more in business than it does in politics, especially when there's so much at stake, such as a war over an entire country. And so I think, similarly to summits that he had with Kim Jong-un, 3 meetings with him there were over expectations, and in the end, nothing really came from those. And so, he's not being a politician or with diplomatic experience, he doesn't see how things are traditionally done with very long negotiations at a lower level until there is actually a result that the top levels can meet and agree upon. You see that at the G7 summits also, and pretty much with any bilateral that is high level. The two leaders don't come with notebooks of we're going to negotiate about this. They come with the issues having already been negotiated by people and responsible people at the lower levels. So I think Alaska was a disappointment to him and to Americans also.
Now, Professor, you spent time in this part of the world. Do you think President Trump has a true understanding of what the outlook of leaders of the global South as such? Or does he expect complete submission? Let's put it that way.
Well, I wouldn't say he expects complete submission, but it's not the kind of people he has dealt with his entire career. As a real estate business person, he was dealing with a lot of property owners and investors, wealthy people, often powerful. And I think he likes to be in contact with people who have significant power, such as world leaders. In his first term, the world leaders that he was mainly dealing with were, Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin, and then to a lesser extent, Western allies and perhaps Japan. But none of those are global South. And I think that I think he may have been surprised by Prime Minister Modi's willingness to step away, and in a sense, I don't know, I wasn't on the phone call conversation with them, of course, but I think there has been some reprimanding, or at least trying to set the record straight by Prime Minister Modi when speaking with Donald Trump. And that's probably kind of new to him. I don't think he really thought of geopolitics in that area of the world, certainly before he became president, and probably not so much after he, in his first term. And in the second term, he likes to look at hotspots and say, I can solve wars, I can bring peace to places like Iran and Israel, and the numerous places that he has described as having brokered ceasefires and peace to. But I think only he paid attention because the conflict sparked up between Pakistan and India 4 months ago, and said, here's an opportunity, another opportunity where I can weigh in and try to make something happen, and maybe add it to my scorecard for trying to get a Nobel Peace Prize. And so I think that's why he paid attention. And I think he and many Americans and policymakers and analysts were surprised by how Modi said, well, no, I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to accept it or give in. And I'm going to go have some good conversations with Xi Jinping, who has long been obviously an adversary of India.
7 years it took for them, for Prime Minister Modi to go back to China. Anyway, I want to talk about Pakistan over here. Professor, glad you brought it up. What is this infatuation that American presidents have with Pakistani dictators or army generals? It seems like an embrace that's been going on since Pakistan's creation.
Well, Pakistan is influential and pivotal. Obviously, India and Pakistan both have nuclear weapons, and pretty much they're mostly pointed at each other. It's not. I don't think India is looking. I mean, China. Okay, maybe it has some targeted to China, but India and Pakistan have 170 nuclear weapons each, and China has 600, but growing rapidly. So I don't think there's really a realistic rivalry going on between China and India in a nuclear sense, but there is between China and Pakistan. And it's one of the theaters that has long kept policymakers and those who are involved in war scenarios awake at night. And so the United States nominally has reasonable relations with both New Delhi and Islamabad, but with Islamabad, they've been very, up and down, intense. And of course, Osama bin Laden was, living there for quite some time before the U.S. Raid came against him. Pakistan is it's somewhat unpredictable, also in the sense that, of course, they've supplied North Korea with a lot of nuclear weapons technology, and so. That's a concern to the United States, and that leads to maybe extended scrutiny and observation of the country. Probably the U.S. feels that Pakistan, the U.S. meaning the government and
yes.
Those in Washington feel that Pakistan is maybe more of a tinderbox than India, and it's not as predictable.
Yeah.
And at the same time, India has such a variety of cultures and languages and conflicts within its own borders that it's maybe India is seen as being busy dealing with interior things, dealing with border with China, dealing with Pakistan, and so this is just my personal view, but I think that's how. Yeah. I think that's one way that Americans look at at Pakistan.
In current day, there was a podcast where Jake Sullivan, which was President Biden's NSA, he essentially said that President Trump has thrown away the relationship with India just because of his family-backed cryptocurrency sort of organization. We did see members of that, I think it's the World Liberty Forum or Council, one of the Trump-backed sort of crypto companies, their officials going to Pakistan and them signing deals, etc. So what do you make of that?
Well, Donald Trump is the first president who's really tried to get into crypto in a policy way, but also in a personal way, launching his own meme coin. So he has a personal business interest in this, and his family does. And so that's crypto is going to play a higher profile role in a Trump administration than in previous administrations. He is a businessman at heart, and that's what he has always done. And he has gone through a lot of different ventures of different kinds of products and services, and this is the latest one. And so, as we see it becoming more acceptable and more exchanges for crypto growing around the world, I think he sees it as a business opportunity.
And he sees Pakistan as a reliable partner for that.
Mm-hmm.
And India is the casualty for that. It would appear that way.
Well, that could be. Again, this is all moving very fast. It's so fast that maybe the result could be a joint crypto exchange between the United States and India if it's a good business proposition.
Right.
That is sort of the basis of many decisions that Donald Trump makes, trying to make things as he sees it in the interest of America. And good for America and good for business.
staying on Pakistan, we saw a few days ago that Pakistan had sought a loan from the Asian Development Bank for one of its key infrastructure projects. That was part of actually the CPEC, which was President Xi's sort of pet project. So, what do you make of that sort of, honestly, a very shocking sort of development that happened? We always assumed that China would keep underwriting infrastructure projects in Pakistan. This seems a realignment happening, probably.
Well, CPEC, as you know, is a long-standing, policy to have this sort of trade economic corridor between the two countries. But I think maybe as Xi Jinping is increasingly, this is now in his third term, increasingly seeing China as a global leader and wanting to be the superpower of the world, not one of the superpowers of the world, is expanding and broadening his or China's trading possibilities and economic alliances, which is one reason that we saw Prime Minister Modi get such a warm welcome in Tianjin when he was at the SCO summit last week. And so that kind of realignment that you referred to is something that I think we'll see more of, because things are becoming less predictable. You can't say, well, it's always been done this way, so it'll probably continue to be done this way. That's a lot. Washington has turned a lot of that on its head, and I think Xi Jinping is not afraid to either. He does not want to be have the United States dictate, say, well, these are terms. This is going to be the way it is. As India doesn't want the United States to say this is the way it's going to be. And so, especially with countries that share borders, then I think you saw Prime Minister Modi with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin together, and that is a swath of territory with contiguous territory with like how many billion people? 2.8.
Yes.
Approaching 3 billion people. And so that is a significant block that Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi can leverage to say, hey, we've got power, we've got leverage. We don't necessarily need you, the United States, and unless you are going to deal with us on more favorable terms, and we over here, hey, we can work some things out that will be to our benefit.
Before Prime Minister Modi flew to Tianjin, President Zelensky and PM Modi had a phone call, and the readout for that was put out on Twitter by both sides. Now, do you see an active role of India to try and bring about a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine? You also saw PM Modi have a 45-minute limo ride with President Putin, where they had, we don't know what they discussed, but I'm guessing developments in Alaska and the Russia-Ukraine war was top of the agenda. So do you see India playing a role in a ceasefire?
Well, I don't think India has come out and said that we want to play this kind of a role, peacekeeping role, but it's always a case of, who can talk to both sides. The United States can't, they can talk to Zelensky, although obviously has sometimes been acrimonious, and they can talk to Putin, but Putin can be very stubborn, and maybe nothing will come out of these things. And so, India is in a position where it can speak to both and get the ear of both leaders in a way that other major countries can't. In the case of what was it, Israel and Saudi Arabia, was it, or UAE? China was the moderator between this. China can speak to Israel. China can speak to Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iran in a way that the United States can't. And so when you have a large country that can play the role of a mediator, then that may be a logical way to go. I don't have a sense that Prime Minister Modi or that Indian government wants to emphasize that, but that also could be some leverage. And wouldn't it be rather amazing if Prime Minister Modi was the one who was able to negotiate a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, and he's the one who wins the Nobel Peace Prize?
The irony won't be lost on anyone. Finally, just looking at the chessboard, the way it is right now, the way the world is rapidly evolving. Where do you see this going? Do you think India-US relations can come back on track, and what would it take?
I think they do, and I think they will. They but it may be with adjustments. Every player is going to be looking at it and saying, what's in it for me? For the United States, what's in it for me? We should be allied with India and arrayed against China. And China thinks the opposite. Hey, let's make peace with India so that we can align our massive populations and manufacturing and exporting economies against the United States. Now, what's most interesting is that, well, what is India thinking in this? Is do they have more to gain by aligning with China, or more to gain with aligning with the United States? And because of the political systems, China, Xi Jinping has been in place for 12 years now. And as the party secretary, and in the United States, for the last several administrations, has been a Trump term, and then a Biden term, and now a Trump term, and who knows what's next. And so the unpredictability of it means that we just may not know, or that it might be hard to tell what India might feel is in its best interests. Obviously, if it can sort of maintain a balance with both and have positives from its relationship with India and China, and positives from its relationship with the United States, then that's the way that it might go. But I think that relations will get better, even though Donald Trump said in his tweet, best wishes to you as you conspire against the United States. He did put that out on his Truth Social media.
But that was for the victory parade, where India was not a part of.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, that. Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, right?
Yes. Clubbing India, I think the shock over here is clubbing India with traditional US adversaries is what we saw in some of the US networks. And that was the reason why, this ratcheting up of sort of the rhetoric from the American side has caught New Delhi by surprise. And that's why I guess the thinking over here is that the off-ramp is still a bit of a distance away.
Well, I think though that with this administration, it could change very quickly. It could change.
That's also true.
Within a week or something like that. I think it won't within a week, but ultimately I think it will. In the long term, I don't think that there is a threat that India will be maneuvered to be antagonistic toward the United States over the long term. But it's difficult to make predictions and the way things move so fast these days. But I do feel that this is a low, and that it will return to stronger ties, but with stronger ties developed with China at the same time.
Professor, thank you for your time.
I'm happy to join you. Thank you.